I'd like to begin by apologising for being improperly dressed. I'm a Fulbright Commissioner, and I spent the day at the Fulbright Commission interviewing applicants for Fulbright Awards, and I didn't have time to change. I just came straight from there. At the Fulbright Commission, everyone is treated equally. It doesn't matter what background you come from, black or white, rich or poor, gay or straight. It doesn't matter what school you went to. We're just interested in finding the best and the brightest, and I hope some of you will apply in due course. Well, Catriona just said, quotas for women, bring it on, it's the only way to get gender equality. Well, last time I looked, you don't have quotas for women at Oxford University. There are no longer any all-women colleges. I won't take a point just yet. But women in Oxford constitute almost 50% of the student population, and I'm sure in due course, without the need for quotas, they'll overtake men. The point you're probably going to make is that once upon a time there were quotas, and without that leg up, women wouldn't now constitute almost 50% of the university. But the proposition haven't been arguing for temporary quotas, they've been arguing for permanent quotas. So they're not actually making that point. Okay, yeah.
It's true, we don't have quotas for women, but men get substantially higher number of births than women, which implies that there isn't actually as much gender equality as it seems on the surface.
Well, I'm not sure that quotas would actually mean more women getting first, but anyway. One of the points the proponents have made repeatedly is that the Oxford and Cambridge University admissions authorities already engage in social engineering because they have all these outreach programs. But what they're overlooking is that when contextual data is taken into account, when not just predicted A-level grades, how applicants performed on the subject aptitude tests, when they don't just look at those indicators, but look at more sophisticated indicators and look at postcodes, the histories of the schools, of getting children into Oxford and Cambridge, they're not doing that in order to advance the cause of social justice or to transform society. They're doing that because that is a better way, a more effective way of finding the best and the brightest. Their only object is to select those most deserving of places on intellectual merit and intellectual merit alone. And they have to do that if Oxford is going to remain a world-class university rather than an outpost of the Guardian editorial page. I think they've criticised these various sophisticated techniques as insufficient. But actually, all the evidence suggests that by and large they work. In 2013, applicants to Oxford from the state sector formed 62.8% of all applicants, and applicants from independent schools formed 37.2% of all applicants. Hold on, I just want to finish this point. Of those admitted to Oxford in 2013, 56.8% from state schools and 43.2% were from independent schools. Okay, the acceptance rate for applicants from independent schools was fractionally higher than the acceptance rate for applicants from state schools, but that's because applicants from state schools apply to the more oversubscribed subjects. By and large, they're more likely to apply to the 5 most popular subjects, and that's why the acceptance rate is slightly lower. It's not because the admissions authorities or individual colleges are prejudiced or are discriminating. The methods they use are, by and large, effective. The reason there aren't more children from state schools at Oxford and Cambridge is because not enough apply. In 2013, 6,974 children from state schools applied to Oxford, compared to 4,125 from independent schools.
On a point of information?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that actually, the quota system would surely encourage those people to apply? So you're persuasively arguing our case. Thank you.
I will come to that point in a minute, but I don't think a quota system would encourage children to apply. I think the reason more children from state schools don't apply to Oxford and Cambridge, and I say this as someone who participated in open access, fair access schemes like the scheme mentioned by one of the speakers earlier on. When I was an undergraduate here, I still go to sixth form colleges up and down the country and try and encourage students to apply to Oxford and Cambridge. The reason they don't, as the Honourable Member for Merton said in his opening speech, is because Oxford is still perceived to be an elitist institution. Why is it perceived to be an elitist institution? Because people like the proponents of this motion bang on and on and on about what an elitist institution it is. And if Oxford University, if the Oxford Union approves this motion, they'll be sending a message. They'll be confirming that preconception. You'll be saying, if you vote for this motion, you're absolutely right. The only way you can force these ghastly, snobbish, prejudiced colleges to be fairer and to consider applications from children from state schools is to force them to do so, because left to their own devices, they won't admit you in the numbers you're entitled to. That's the message you'd be sending. And it's not a message that would encourage children from state schools to apply. We have to disabuse all the children who aren't applying and who could perfectly easily get in if they did. We have to disabuse them of the notion that Oxford is an elitist, discriminatory institution. And the way to do that is not to introduce quotas, which sends precisely the opposite message. Another reason I think it would be profoundly unhelpful to introduce quotas is that it would be extremely unhelpful for those of us engaged in trying to raise standards in state schools. Yeah, sure.
Are you really suggesting it's got nothing to do with the quality of their education? That some people can pay for a better one and some people don't have access to it?
No, I'm not suggesting that for a second. You're absolutely right. But the way to address that problem is to improve standards in state schools, not to lower the bar for applicants from state schools. If you lower the bar, if you say the only way you can have the same chance of getting into Oxford and Cambridge as someone from an independent school is if you're not playing on a level playing field, the only way you'd have the same chance is if we create quotas and force the colleges and university admissions authorities to admit a quota of students, applicants from state schools. You're effectively saying you'll never be as good as independent schools, you'll always be second rate. What kind of information, what kind of message is that to send to children at state schools? And I recently wrote in The Spectator that there's no reason why comprehensive schools can't be every bit as good as Stowe and Rugby, to which the editor replied, surely you've got to aim higher than that. and he's absolutely right. There isn't any reason why state schools can't aim higher than that. Last year, a free school in Acton, a primary school called Ark Conway, got the best Key Stage 1 results in the country. That is better, not just better, than every state primary in England, but better than every fee-paying pre-prep school as well. The school that Barnaby Lennon is the chair of governors at in East London, it got 6 children into Oxford and Cambridge last year. Mossbourne Academy in 2011 got 10 children into Oxford and Cambridge last year. Those are outstanding schools, but there's no reason why, if more children don't apply from state schools, that they won't get in. The way to address this injustice, and I'm not disputing for a second that it is an injustice, the way to address this injustice is not to impose quotas, is not to say to applicants from state schools that the university authorities, the colleges, have to be forced to admit you because otherwise they won't. It's not to say to state schools, to teachers and head teachers and pupils and parents that you'll always be second class. And the only way you can compete with independent schools is if we lower the bar when you apply. No, if you want to address this injustice, get involved in open access programs. Encourage children from sixth forms up and down the country which don't send children to Oxford or Cambridge and never have. Encourage them to apply. Disabuse them of the notion that this is an institution which isn't for the likes of them, which is just for the social elite. Better yet, get involved in Teach First. Get involved in the movement to try and improve standards in state schools and make sure that they are every bit as good as independent schools, as Barnaby Lennon is doing. And I'm telling you, if you do that, in 5-10 years' time, you won't be considering a motion to extend quotas to improve admissions for state school applicants to Oxford and Cambridge, there'll be people here from the Independent Schools Association, Barnaby's successors, pleading with you to introduce quotas for children from independent schools, and you should no more countenance that than you should countenance this. I beg to oppose.